Hey, where'd that go? Where'd it go? What's that? Well, as I wondered what was going on, my husband got demoted because he seemed to be making more mistakes at work. He has never been a hard worker, so he didn't seem too shocked by the demotion. But he kept forgetting things more and more, so we went to the hospital just to make sure. I suspected that it might be depression, but I was told that the disease was, in fact, juvenile Alzheimer's. To put it simply, it was dementia. I've heard that even young people can develop the disease these days, but I couldn't hide my shock that my husband had it. My name is Katie Smith. 5 years has passed since then, and I am now 50 years old, and my husband is 54. We were not blessed with children, and I continue to work. My parents have already passed away, but my husband's parents are still alive and well, and they live in the countryside, a short distance from where we live. They're very warm people, and when my husband was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, they even suggested to take him in themselves and that I should get a divorce. But my husband, who originally hated living in that country, adamantly refused to do so. I didn't immediately decide to get a divorce because of my husband's illness either. We have been together for nearly 20 years as husband and wife by fate, not just by sickness and in health, though. I thought it would be wrong to say, yes, bye-bye, just because he became ill. Although my husband became more forgetful, it wasn't like he could no longer lead a normal life. Perhaps the medication he takes to control the progression of the disease is working. It isn't so bad because it's not like he's unable to do anything, and he's still able to recognize me. Although he sometimes doesn't respond to me, he's not much different from a normal person when he acts normally. However, when I asked him about certain things, he often says he doesn't know or doesn't remember. He made more mistakes at work, and sometimes cried when he couldn't understand the paperwork. I'm thinking of quitting the company, so if I quit, would you support me? He said so, but I couldn't say no to my anxious husband, and in the end, he quit the company. He never goes out and spends most of his time at home, but I don't see any problematic behavior when he's inside the house. He often leaves things out and doesn't put them away, or comes home to find food all over the place. But it's not like he's bothering anyone else, so it's within the realm of acceptable behavior. So my husband has been home ever since he quit his job. I talked to the doctor about the possibility of having someone to take care of him while I'm away at work. But he said that I don't have to worry too much because he still has the ability to detect danger. The doctor said we would talk again when the disease progresses. For now, the doctor told me to tell my husband to lock the door when he goes out and not to go outside alone. I was still a little concerned if he would be okay with that, but he just kept saying, it's okay to be alone. And sometimes he lost his temper if I insisted too much. Shut up! I'm sick! Don't talk about unnecessary things. You're confusing my head more and more. Be considerate to me. I had to leave him alone because I couldn't handle him. 5 years before my husband's illness was discovered, at the age of 40, I was promoted to a section manager. My salary increased, so even if my husband left the company, we didn't suddenly find ourselves in a difficult situation. We didn't have children, so we had a good amount of savings, so there was no need to panic when the time came, and the savings were still untouched. I was really glad that I was working. I only hope that the life will continue to be as normal as possible. However, there's one thing that's been bothering me lately. Things often go missing. Many of the things that are missing are brand name bags that I used to cherish, shoes and clothes that I had just bought, and other things that are pretty expensive. I saved them up and bought them as a reward for myself. I looked for them, wondering if I put them somewhere unusual, but I couldn't find them. When I asked my husband about it, all he said was, I don't know. I asked him, hey, do you remember taking it somewhere? No, I don't remember. My husband just repeats the same words. I wonder if his illness has progressed to the point where he doesn't even remember that he took them out of the house. When I come home from work and ask what he did today, he often says, "I can't remember." The doctor told me that sometimes the progression of the disease is slow and sometimes rapid, but I couldn't help but wonder if the progression was getting faster. If this were the case, I would be concerned about leaving him alone while I'm away. If he started to wander around, I wouldn't be able to take care of him by myself. I was so worried about how my husband was doing that I set up surveillance cameras in the house without telling him. What if he starts wandering around and bothering other people? I don't want him to do that. If that were to happen, I would have to deal with the situation accordingly. A week later, after my husband went to sleep, I fearfully checked the footage from the camera. But what I saw there was far beyond what I imagined, and I was astonished. I had no idea that this was happening. My husband was bringing a woman into our home. I haven't even had a proper conversation with my husband for the past 5 years. He only answered vaguely when I asked him anything, but in the video, he was talking normally without any barriers. It was hard to believe that he was suffering from dementia. Moreover, I was even more surprised when I saw the face of the woman who came in. It was the female doctor who had diagnosed my husband with dementia. The hospital we went to was the one that was in charge of medical checkups for my husband's company. Was this some kind of sick joke between my husband and the female doctor? Or is it a complete lie that he has dementia? Are you sure that she hasn't found out about it at all? Not at all. Dementia is a convenient disease. I don't have to work, and I could just say I don't remember it to anything inconvenient. What a bad man. You make your wife work while you relax at home and bring your mistress along. You started it, didn't you? When I said I was tired of working and wanted to quit, you said you had a good idea. I didn't think it would go so well. The woman was shown crossing her legs as she laughed with my husband. She's very cocky anyway. I don't know if she got promoted to section chief or whatever, but she's getting paid more and more than me. She's getting ahead of me. I'm sure she must have looked down on me. But thanks to her, we can spend time like this. Well, she's my ATM, so she's got to keep working hard. You said she was your housekeeper the other day. She's my housekeeper and ATM. I thought this is what it meant to have my mind go blank. The words coming out of the screen swirled in my head over and over. Oh, and Hannah, don't take things out of the house too much, because my wife noticed some stuff is missing. She said, "Why don't you just take them out of the house and pretend they're gone? It's a disease, so you can just say you forgot it." Well, that's true. No other disease is as convenient as this one. Now I won't have to work for the rest of my life. So, that's what this is. What was I, who has been trying to support him without questioning him? For 5 years, I've worked so hard and done so much housework without knowing what I was doing. I felt like an idiot and felt as if my power has been drained from my entire body. For some reason, I suddenly burst into laughter. I thought I might have gone crazy. That's how angry, sad, frustrated, and despairing I felt. The despair didn't end there. I checked my bank book to see if it was possible, and found that my balance was 0. All deposits I've saved since we got married were taken out. I felt so lost. I thought it was the end of the world. I couldn't feel any emotion. When dawn broke, my husband woke up with a nonchalant look on his face, and as soon as I saw him, I felt a rage welling up inside my emotionless soul. "Where's breakfast?" I felt like grabbing my husband by the chest and cursing him with all my power, but I resisted the urge. My husband still didn't know that I knew the truth. I couldn't stop myself from just confronting him with the truth and making him apologize right here and now. However, I had no idea what to do, but I knew that even if I got angry at him, he would just smile at me and say, "You found out, didn't you?" "What are you planning to do today?"
"What is it? You never ask me that."
"I'm just wondering what you do at home every day."
"I really want to work like you do, but I'm sick, so I just give everyone around me some trouble. I envy you for being able to work."
I wondered how he could say such things so blatantly. Of course, since it is a clear fact that he cheated on me, I can use it as a reason to file for alimony and divorce. But when I thought about the past 5 years, I was so frustrated and I burst into tears. I feel that people who can do such things with impunity would normally say, "I'm just kidding." Then, they will try their best to make excuses by putting up some unexplainable logic. A few days passed as I figured out what I should do. Just looking at my husband's face made me want to throw up, but I endured it patiently. The camera remained attached. My husband thought I knew nothing about it, so he continued to bring the doctor in when I was out of town. I said, "Hey, did anyone come in today? I thought I smelled someone else." He said,
"Well, I might have came, but I don't remember. Maybe it was a salesman."
"So, how are you feeling? You've been looking better lately. Are you on the mend treatment?"
I don't think so. I think I've become more forgetful lately. The doctor said that once you have the disease, you can slow down the progression, but you can't cure it."
That's right. That doctor was a beautiful woman, wasn't she?"
"Was she? I can't remember her face."
In a way, I was impressed that he could continue to act like this for so long. I couldn't just shut up and sit, so I visited my parents-in-law with the recorded video in my hand without telling my husband. They're always so kind and considerate to me, but they're my husband's parents. It was a lie if I said I didn't worry at all. No matter how bad he might be, he's their son, and they could take my husband's side rather than mine. They might say that my husband cheats on me because I, his wife, am not good enough. Some might say that I was an unfit wife for not understanding my husband's reluctance to go to work, even after telling such a lie. I had no one else to talk to. I was thinking, if both of them blamed me, I would just give up, shut up, and get a divorce. "Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm sorry to call you out of the blue, but I wanted to talk to you about something." "What's wrong? You look so worn out. What happened?" "Ma'am, Anyway, come on up. Are you hungry? I'll make you something hot to eat." My mother-in-law's words almost made me cry. I didn't need to worry at all. My parents-in-law, who saw the video of the affair between my husband and the female doctor, got down on their knees and apologized to me on the spot.
"Stupid son, I'm so sorry."
"Katie, I am so sorry." Instead of blaming me, they were crying and holding my hands, which made me cry too. It was as if all the tension that built up in me for so long was suddenly gone. But that didn't make my anger at my husband disappear. But I was happy from the bottom of my heart to know that I had someone on my side. There was one more thing that made me happy. To my surprise, I received an offer of promotion to a department head position. I was more than happy to know that there was a place where I would be recognized if I worked hard. I was reassured that there was a place for me, too.
"Hey, Katie, are you listening to me?"
"What? Oh, I'm sorry, I was a little spaced out. I was thinking about how I could punish my husband, and I got a little carried away."
"It's not funny if you and your husband are both demented."
His words made me think of something. "I wondered if you would take care of me if I became demented."
"Screw you! I've got my hands full with me myself. There's no way I can take care of you."
When I said this, my husband looked at me with wide eyes. From then on, I've tried to say a little more of what he said before every day, to make it more real. Hey, what was I doing earlier? I've been making a lot of mistakes at work lately. I seem to be forgetting things. I forgot how to use the washing machine or how to cook rice. My husband began to get more and more nervous. I don't know if I can keep working, but I'm glad you're here. After about 2 months of this, one day when I came home from work, I found out that my husband left the house. He left behind the divorce papers he had already filled out. He even left a polite note. I don't want to cause you any more trouble, so I've decided to divorce you. Please don't look for me. Ken. I know he ran away because he thought I might have dementia. Besides, I know exactly where my husband left off. My husband rented an apartment so that he could continue his relationship with the female doctor. This was also revealed in the hidden video. I'm getting a divorce. It won't be funny if I have to take care of her. I have already moved my savings to another place, so I won't have to worry about living for a while, he said with a laugh. He politely told her where his apartment was. I knew where the doctor lived from the conversation, so I went to the neighborhood. The female doctor was married and lived in a house in the suburbs with her family. I immediately submitted the divorce paper and sent a bill for alimony and property division to her husband's newly rented apartment. Of course, I also sent the female doctor a bill for alimony by certified mail. It seemed like my husband received it, and he called me right away. He said, "What the hell? What's this? What's this about alimony?" Of course it's alimony for cheating on me. What? Oh, yeah. I sent it to that lady doctor too. I'm sure her husband must have found out about it by now, and they're having a hard time. In addition to the one I sent to the woman doctor, I also sent the video taken by the hidden camera to my husband. I thought her husband had a right to know. Oh, you. How did you know that? I was surprised too. I can't believe it was all a lie. I thought you were going crazy. Oh, you know, I was just trying to imitate you. You're so easy to fool, aren't you? You... My husband shut his eyes to what he did and started yelling at me. He said to me, I'm cheating, dirty. Do you think you have a right to be angry with me after pretending to have dementia for 5 years and living off my earnings? And you even brought a woman into the house. Do you think you're allowed to do that? I guess my husband never even dreamed that I knew everything. Suddenly, he became slurred. But what do you mean by division of property? I don't have property. You have your savings. Oh, I've already spent it all, and there's not a penny left. I thought he has come this far and was still blabbing. I revealed that I planted a camera in our house. I also told him that I heard everything he had told the woman doctor there, and that I had all footage as evidence. I have solid proof. When I told him that his parents knew about this and were furious, he started yelling at me again, saying, "How dare you tell them about this?" He doesn't seem to understand that he has no right to yell at me now. Thank God he blabbed on, so I didn't have to hire an investigative firm and spend any extra money. When I said this, my husband became silent for a while, perhaps at a loss of words, and then hung up on the phone. The following month, I received another call. What's going on? What? I just went to the apartment, and they said it was already canceled. What apartment? The apartment we lived in, of course. I thought to myself, he was the one who left the divorce papers, so I didn't expect him to come back. When I told him that I canceled the lease immediately after my husband left, he started to get angry, asking me why I did without telling him. I was told that my husband, who was unemployed, couldn't be the tenant of the apartment, so when he quit his job, I'd changed the name of the apartment to mine. So it was up to me to decide when to terminate the lease and where to move. I bought a condo. I live there now.
You bought it?
With the alimony I got from you and your lover, and the savings I got back.
It's a small apartment, but it's my castle.
Really? I'm going there then. I wonder what kind of people would have such idea. You have a girlfriend, don't you?
I already broke up with her.
Her husband found out she was cheating on him and divorced her. She was pointed the finger in the hospital, made a diagnostic error, got sued by a patient.
Her husband and you are both suing her for alimony, and now she's in debt.
Oh, really?
So, I decided to start over with you. Then the alimony will be cancelled, and I can get the money back, right?
I can't deal with this man anymore. Does he really think I accept his offer? He even started saying that he and I should get back together, and that the alimony being claimed by her husband should be returned to me. I feel like saying, "Are you out of your mind?
You a fool! Why should I pay? We're divorced.
I don't ever want to see your face ever again. There's no way in hell I'm getting back together with you." I said so and hung up on the phone, and I blocked all incoming calls from him. Apparently, my ex-husband then went to visit his parents. At that time, my ex-husband didn't know that his parents had actually sold their house and moved into an apartment for the elderly. They told me that he was surprised when he went to their house and saw that it was for sale, and he contacted them. Since we had a lawyer intervene to collect the money for the division of property and alimony, there would be almost no money left in his pocket. My ex-husband was unable to find a new job and was evicted because he could no longer pay the rent on the apartment. He had nowhere to go, so he must have asked his parents for help. They must have anticipated this and decided to move out. If he came back, they might not be able to kick him out. They told me if that happened, they would be sorry for me. I heard that he's now living as a live-in worker at a factory somewhere, but he's so lazy that he can't work as much, and he gets yelled at and beaten up by employees much younger than him every day. It seemed he has contacted his parents several times for assistance, but they have brushed him off. A few months have passed since the divorce, and I still keep in touch with them. They're always concerned about me and are like my real parents to me. I want to continue to be close to them, and if something happens to them, I will be sure to take care of them. I've been promoted to department manager, and my salary has increased. I intend to keep working hard. I am very much enjoying my peaceful life alone now.
Mom! Mike! One day, when I got home from school, my mom and my brother Mike, who were supposed to be at home, were nowhere to be found. Even as evening came, they didn't return, and to make matters worse, my dad didn't come back from work either. I hesitated for a moment as my hand touched the fridge handle. Normally, I wouldn't even dare to go near the fridge, let alone touch it, because my mom would scold me about wasting electricity. Overwhelmed by hunger, I finally opened the door. Inside, there were only condiments like ketchup and mayonnaise. Desperate to satisfy my hunger, I grabbed the ketchup and squeezed it into my mouth, but I ended up coughing from the strong acidity and sweet spicy taste. I put my mouth directly under the faucet and gulped down tap water. It didn't feel like it filled my stomach at all. Then, I heard a noise from the direction of the entrance. Mom! Thinking everyone had come back, I ran to the entrance, but standing there was my grandmother Susan. Mary! Weren't you supposed to be in Germany? Both my grandmother and I were surprised and looked at each other. Dad, Mom, and Mike all left for Germany just a while ago. I thought for sure you had gone with them. A mix of surprise, sadness, and anger was evident in my grandmother's expression. This is just too much. With a determined nod, my grandmother said, Mary, from today on, you'll live at my house. She smiled kindly and hugged me. My grandmother's arms were very warm. My name is Mary, and I'm in my 20s. Currently, I live with my grandmother, who has been feeling weak in her legs. Going up and down the apartment elevator is hard, but I've never thought of assisting my grandmother as a burden. On the contrary, I feel a debt of gratitude towards her that I can never fully express. If it weren't for my grandmother, I don't know where I'd be right now. My family situation has been complicated since I was young. I struggled with learning words and was slower at reading and writing than other kids in elementary school, not just in English but in other subjects as well, making my grades some of the lowest. Both of my parents graduated from top national universities, and it seemed like they resented me for not being good at studies. Do Mom and Dad hate me? Mumbling to myself, I couldn't understand why my parents dislike me, and night after night, I would fall asleep crying. I have an older brother, Mike, who is 5 years older than me. Unlike me, Mike has always been quick to learn and has consistently achieved top-level results in school tests since he was young. He was even called a prodigy by our school and neighbors, and for our parents, Mike was a source of pride. My mother would always compare Mike and me, sighing and saying things like, "Because of you, our entire family feels embarrassed. Please, try to stay indoors as much as possible." She spoke in an unmistakably unpleasant manner. "I'm sorry, Mom." That was all I could ever manage to say in response. As test days approached, my mother would always kick me out of my room, claiming I'd disturb Mike, and place a cushion in the hallway for me. "You'll sleep here for the next few days," she'd say, but it was during the cold winter, and I shook my head, refusing. Seeing this, my father became furious. "Don't be selfish when you're so useless. Be grateful you're not kicked out of the house." And he yelled in agreement with his mother. At the time, I didn't know the word unfair, but I couldn't understand why I was the only one subjected to such treatment, and I was overwhelmed with frustration and tears. My mother's harassment of me escalated, and eventually, she'd make me kneel in the hallway and say, "Eat this," as she poured dressing on vegetable peels meant to be thrown away as organic waste, forcing me to eat them. Meanwhile, my family enjoyed warm soup and conversations in the heated dining room. "Hey, Ben. Mike topped his class again in the recent test." "It's nothing. Thanks for sending me to a top-level tutoring center so I can focus on my studies. I appreciate it. Don't get ahead of yourself. Being top of the local school means nothing if you lose to a rival. You need to aim higher." "I understand. I'll continue to work hard and stay focused on my studies." After finishing the vegetable peels, I held the empty plate and said, "Mom, I'd like some warm soup too." My mother glared at me. "Why don't you drink from the river?" she retorted, and then the three of them burst into laughter. Hearing my family's exchanges, all I could do was sit in the hallway, hugging my knees, enduring the hunger and cold, waiting for dawn to break. In those times, there was one person who became my ally, my paternal grandmother. She used to live far away but moved into a nearby vacant house to start a handicraft class because her previous home was too small. When I returned home from school, she'd beckon me with a smile. "Welcome back. Did you have fun at school? I've prepared some snacks for you, come eat." As dusk began to fall and I watched my grandmother start to prepare dinner from behind. "Mary, you should be heading home soon. Isn't your mom waiting, preparing dinner for you?" She noticed my gaze and turned around to ask. I shook my head vigorously from side to side. "Mom won't make anything for me." "Then what do you usually eat?" "Vegetable peels, tap water." My grandmother rushed over and hugged me tightly. "From today on, you'll eat here." "Really? Is that okay?" Of course. You're growing, Mary. You need to eat plenty and grow big and strong. Thank you, Grandma. For the first time, I felt someone's warmth and couldn't stop my tears. From that day, I started sneaking over to my grandmother's house to eat, avoiding my family's eyes. Being able to have a warm meal and fill my stomach felt like a reward. Things that seem ordinary now were a joy for me back then. Students began flocking to my grandmother's house for the craft class she started. Neither my grandmother nor her students ever treated me as a nuisance, but I made sure to keep to a corner of the room and quietly draw so as not to disturb anyone. I feared nothing more than being disliked by my grandmother, for then I would have no place left at all. Somehow, drawing allowed me to forget the unpleasantness around me. One day, knowing my situation, my grandmother stormed to my parents' house and yelled, "What are you thinking? Not feeding her properly. Mary is your child too." My father just frowned in annoyance and locked himself in his room, leaving my mother to deal with it, who replied with a sigh, "Punishing bad grades is part of parenting. Don't interfere with our educational methods." They didn't listen at all. Worse yet, after my grandmother left, I was scolded severely by my parents. "Why did you tell Grandma such things? I came back from work tired and all you do is just cause trouble." "That's right. You're already useless. Don't make things harder for us." "I'm sorry." With a heavy heart, all I could do was apologize, pushing down the feelings of injustice. "From tomorrow, stop going to Grandma's. Your presence embarrasses us in the neighborhood," I was harshly told. Feeling dejected, I encountered Mike as I walked down the hallway, just as he came out of his room. "You've got it easy, always free to play." "I have to study because I'm capable, which makes my days busy and hard." Thinking it was a taunt, I didn't reply but glared back at him angrily. Then, one day, "A friend of mine works at an educational institution in Germany. I mentioned Mike to him, and he suggested we let Mike attend a university there." "Wow, university? But Mike is still in elementary school." "Don't worry. Regardless of age, those who are capable can aim for the top. With Mike's abilities, skipping grades is a certainty. Besides, it would be a waste to keep Mike in a low-level education through middle school and high school. It'd be like throwing tuition money down the drain." "That's true. For someone of Mike's capabilities, aiming higher is essential for his future." "Understood. Let's plan to move as a family soon. Thank you for doing this for me. Dad, Mom." While overhearing the conversation about moving abroad, I was seized by anxiety. I can barely read and write English. How will I manage to communicate in German after moving to Germany? Won't I just be a burden to my family in Germany? I stopped Mike as he was about to return to his room. "Mike, I'm scared of learning German." "That's not something you need to worry about." Mike scoffed and locked himself in his room. I couldn't grasp the meaning behind Mike's words. Does it mean that even if I can't understand German, my parents and Mike will help me? Trying to think positively seemed futile given my family's treatment of me up to now. Then, one day after returning from school, I searched the house. "Mom! Mike!" But my mother and brother were nowhere to be found. Evening came, and not only did they not return, but my father didn't come back from work either. That day, something strange was said to me by my homeroom teacher at school. "Will your dad and mom come to pick you up later?" The teacher asked with a puzzled look, but I couldn't understand what she meant and was at a loss for words. What did that mean? Was it that my parents were going to take me somewhere? But no matter how long I waited, none of my family returned. Hesitating for a moment, my hand touched the fridge handle. Normally, I wouldn't even dare to go near the fridge, let alone touch it, because my mom would scold me about wasting electricity. Overwhelmed by hunger, I opened the door. Inside were only condiments like ketchup and mayonnaise. Desperate to satisfy my hunger, I grabbed the ketchup and squeezed it into my mouth, but coughed due to the intense acidity and sweet spicy taste. I put my mouth directly under the tap and gulped down water. It didn't feel like it filled my stomach at all. Then, I heard the door opening from the entrance. "Mom!" Hoping everyone had returned, I headed to the entrance, but standing there was my grandmother. "Mary! Weren't you supposed to be in Germany?" Both my grandmother and I were surprised and looked at each other. "Dad, Mom, and Mike all left for Germany just now. I thought for sure you had gone with them." My grandmother's expression was a mix of surprise, sadness, and anger. "This is just too much." With a determined nod, my grandmother said, "Mary, from today on, you'll live at my house." She smiled kindly and held me in her arms. My grandmother's embrace was very warm. And so, I came to live with my grandmother. When I got home from school and said, "I'm home," my grandmother would respond with a cheerful welcome back from inside the house. That was what I cherished the most. Sometimes, while I was sleeping, I would dream about my parents and brother leaving me behind and going far away. And when I woke up, I would find my pillow wet with tears. To me, who had forgotten how to smile after being abandoned by my family, my grandmother said, "Those people are not your family. From now on, I am your family." Every night, she would hug my trembling body tightly. Thanks to her, I stopped having scary dreams. "Teacher, I'm looking forward to today's lesson." My grandmother's craft class was popular, and many students came. On days when there was a class, I quietly drew in a corner of the room, careful not to be in the way. I really wanted to play more with my grandmother, but didn't feel it was my place to ask too much. If my grandmother grew tired of me, I would have no place to belong. I didn't want to lose a family again. After the class ended and the students had left, my grandmother, with a broad smile, said, "Mary, thank you for waiting. Shall we have some ice cream together?" She took out the ice cream she had bought from the freezer and handed it to me. "Grandma, this is delicious." Of course, the ice cream itself was sweet and cold, but what I loved most was spending time eating it with my grandmother. Trying to extend these moments, I ate my ice cream slowly, until eventually, it melted and dropped to the floor. "I'm sorry, Grandma." I thought she would hate me. I apologized reflexively, trembling. If it had been my mother next to me, I would have been punished by now. But my grandmother just laughed and didn't get angry. Instead, she gently patted my head. "Don't be scared. Everyone makes mistakes. More importantly, Mary, keep smiling. I love your smiling face the most." After that, I gradually began to regain my smile. After dinner and a bath, when I was ready for bed, my grandmother would teach me to read and write almost every night. "This letter is written like this. Now, you try." I tried to imitate the letters my grandmother wrote, but at first, they were crooked. "Don't rush. With daily practice, you'll gradually get better." My grandmother's teaching method was very clear, and my fear of words gradually disappeared. After a few years, I had grown to be able to read and write enough for daily life. I got praised by the teacher for my book report. "That's wonderful, Mary." One day, as I quietly drew while watching my grandmother's craft class as usual, a student who had gotten up for a break approached me from behind and peered at my drawing. "Mary, you're really good at drawing." Hearing this, the other students gathered around and looked at my drawing, echoing similar cheers. "With just a pencil, she can draw this accurately?" She might be a genius. Especially the expressions on the faces and the lines of the clothes wrinkles are too realistic, almost at a professional level. At that moment, I was drawing my beloved grandmother. I thought the students were just exaggerating to be nice to my grandmother. I was simply transferring what I saw onto my sketchbook, nothing more. After the class ended and the students left, my grandmother looked closely at my drawing. Those people earlier were a bit exaggerated, weren't they? I laughed, but my grandmother looked at me seriously. Not at all. You might have a talent for drawing, Mary. I was skeptical, but then, wow, Mary, that's amazing. I remembered being praised in school art classes by teachers and peers. I had thought they were just being kind to me because my family had abandoned me. Actually, I had no idea how much talent I had for drawing. Am I really that good? Yes, you are. Mary, you have a promising future. I know someone who runs an art class. Would you like to learn there? Yes, I'd love to. It was my grandmother who gave me a clear goal. 12 years had passed since then. Mary? It's really you. We're fans of your work. The expressions of the people, the warm use of colors, just looking at them makes us cry, said a woman much older than me, tears streaming down her face as she asked for a handshake. Thank you, I replied with a wry smile, shaking her hand and posing for photos with a smile. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to your future works, Mary. The gallery was bustling with people every day. I had succeeded as a contemporary realist painter. Mary, you have a TV appearance scheduled for this evening, so we need to start getting ready soon. Understood. But wait a moment. I stopped my manager and looked down. A little girl was desperately reaching out for a handshake. Thank you. Have you always been supporting me? The girl smiled but didn't speak. A woman, presumably her mother, hurried over and picked up the girl. I'm sorry. She's not good with talking to people. It's okay. Don't rush her. I used to struggle with writing myself. But with family around to kindly watch over, you'll eventually find something you love and shine someday. Thank you. The girl articulated her thoughts with effort, despite stumbling over her pronunciation. I'm the one who should be thanking you, I replied, squeezing the girl's hand again. Her mother hugged her child tightly and said, That was wonderful, wasn't it? With a beaming smile. Watching them, I felt confident that the child would be all right. It's time to go. Urged by my manager, I started to prepare to leave when the entrance to the hall became noisy. Please wait! We can't let people without tickets in. At the center of the commotion were a man and a woman in shabby clothes. The security guards were desperately trying to stop them, but they broke through and rushed towards me. Let go. We're her family. We don't need entrance tickets, do we? That's right. You have no right to stop us. Although their appearances had changed drastically over time, the moment I heard their voices, I felt a chill down my spine. The urge to flee overwhelmed me, but my legs were frozen, unable to move. The man and woman were indeed my father and mother. It's Dad, you remember, right? Mary? I'm so happy to see you again. As the security guards hesitated, knowing they were family, my parents approached me with composed steps. Though they should be in their 40s, they looked as if they were in their 50s or even 60s. You've become so distinguished, Mary. When we saw your face on a huge billboard in New York, both your mother and I were shocked. To think our daughter would become so famous. I always believed in you. I knew you would become someone important someday. I'm so glad I gave birth to you." Confronted by this elderly couple who spoke as if nothing had happened in the last 12 years, I was dumbfounded and couldn't find the words to respond immediately. "What's wrong? You've been silent." "Excuse me, but who are you, please? What are you talking about? You haven't forgotten, have you? It's Dad. Surely you're just being shy. We appeared so suddenly, you must be surprised, right? Isn't that it?" How utterly self-centered can people be? "What are you doing here now?" I asked, deliberately avoiding eye contact. "What do you mean? Let's start living together again. We've come here for that." "I don't know these people. Please have them removed." I gave the order to the security guard in a flat tone, but the confused guard didn't know how to react. To me, my only family is my grandmother. "I don't know these people." "You're not still holding a grudge about that time, are you?" "That was our mistake. Sorry about that." My father apologized with a nonchalant attitude, not appearing remorseful. "Still holding on to the past like that, you're still a child. We're family, aren't we? It's natural for a family to live together. It's time you grew up and—" "Absolutely not." I couldn't contain my anger. "The only person I can call family is Grandma. When you two left me to go abroad, only Grandma stood by me. I won't acknowledge you as my family now." My mother bit her lip and glared at me. Yes, that look. The same cold gaze as if she were looking at something filthy. "If you hate us that much, we'll give up on living together. Instead, could you give us one of your paintings?" I was at a loss, unable to comprehend my father's inappropriate request. "We're actually a bit short on money right now. I've heard that the paintings you draw are worth $1 million each. So, wouldn't it be all right to give us one of them? You have a proud son named Mike, don't you? Why don't you ask him for help? I'm not drawing for you guys. I will never give away my paintings." "Don't mention Mike. I don't even want to hear that guy's name." Suddenly, my mother screamed almost like a wail. "Why would you say that? He's your child, isn't he? That guy is no son of ours. Just a nuisance." Then, the two of them bitterly recounted what had become of Mike over these 12 years. After moving to Germany with the family, Mike quickly got admitted to a prestigious university thanks to his academic abilities. That was all according to our expectations. But soon after, Mike lost his motivation to study. He stopped attending university and started living a wild life, hanging out with bad company during the day. No matter what his parents said, he wouldn't listen, and eventually, he stopped coming home altogether. He even got into trouble with the police. The Mike they described was truly a lost cause. Yet, I felt sympathy for Mike. He must have been another victim tormented by these parents. A few days after my family left me for Germany, I found a notebook in Mike's room. It detailed how he was forced to study every day, wasn't allowed to play with friends, got pigeonholed into a life decided by our parents after accidentally scoring 100 on a test in first grade, and how he was envious of me for not being expected to study. Mike once told me he envied me when we were kids, but I finally understood after reading that notebook. My father whispered, so others wouldn't hear. "Just between us, Mike is a lost cause. We tried to rehabilitate him by bringing him back home, but who knows what he's doing now. The police came asking about him recently. He seems to be hanging out with dangerous people too. Might even be involved with one of those scam groups that are all the rage now. It's only a matter of time before he gets arrested. So, if you feel sorry for us being troubled by such a foolish son, please give us one of your paintings. It would save us." It's also your chance to do a filial duty, right? Saying this, my parents began to apologize deeply in front of me. Enough already! You too! Suddenly my grandmother, who was in a wheelchair, shouted. I've been listening quietly, and now because Mike turned out bad, you want Mary to help? What a joke! You were the ones who abandoned that child. Mom? Why are you here? It's my precious granddaughter's exhibition. Coming here is only natural as family. With that, my grandmother glared at my father and mother. You two are no longer family or anything to us. Just strangers. Now, get out. Security, what are you waiting for? Startled by my grandmother's shout, the security guards hurried into action. Wait a minute. Then we have our own plan. A plan? Let's hear this plan of yours. Susan, you've kidnapped our daughter, haven't you? Kidnapped? You were the ones who abandoned this child and went abroad. My grandmother was furious, but I instead offered a wry smile. Calm down, Grandma. Getting all worked up will just raise your blood pressure again. I tried to calm my uncontrollably emotional grandmother. Then, facing my parents who were smirking triumphantly, I have unfortunate news for you. Legally, Grandma and I are now mother and daughter. Therefore, she cannot be accused of kidnapping. What nonsense are you talking about? There's no way that could be recognized without the consent of the real parents. But it is recognized. I was adopted by Grandma when I was 18. Legally, adoption without the biological parents' consent is possible if the adoptee is over 18. Don't be ridiculous! How could such a thing be allowed? Despite their protests, my parents attempted to sit down in the gallery but were taken outside by police officers who had been called to the scene. Mary, are you okay? My grandmother asked, gently patting my back with her usual kind smile. Don't worry about it, Grandma. I'm fine, I replied with a broad smile. After being taken to the police station. What a nerve to call yourself a parent! My parents were reportedly harshly reprimanded by the officer in charge. A journalist friend let me in on that bit of information secretly. Later, I learned through the news that Mike had been arrested for fraud. The TV screen showed Mike being put into a police car, but he bore no resemblance to the prodigy he once was called. My parents ended up being responsible for a significant amount of compensation for the crimes Mike committed, and reporters crowded in front of their house daily. Help us out! We're your real parents, aren't we? He's right. Don't you remember that I gave birth to you? My parents kept showing up at my home and studio, saying such things. Considering the future, my grandmother and I decided to move to a high-security apartment where my parents couldn't easily reach us. I'm sorry for making an elderly person like me your responsibility. Not at all. I'm very happy. After all, everything I am today is thanks to you, Grandma. Recently, my grandmother began to fall ill frequently. I hugged her as tightly as I could. I love you, Grandma. Though she had become much smaller, she was as warm as ever.